All right, folks, we are live. We are back. It is Yankees Unloaded. Juan Soto's gone. It's okay. We're going to talk about Plan B, what that ultimately means, what it could mean, what's going on at winter meetings. Wish we were there, but we're not. So we're going to do everything that we possibly can from the comfort of our own home. Gary, of course, how you doing, man? We did 2 videos earlier today on Kyle Tucker and Corbin Burns, who we're definitely going to be talking about in this one. But I'm excited to get going.
Yeah, well, for whatever reason, the last 2 hours, I wasn't sure if we would have much to talk about, but it seems like MLB Network's John Morosi, Feinstein, everyone was getting busy, at least asking the right questions, which are who's available. Because right now, I think the Yankees, they sort of got punched in the mouth. That was Plan A, and it was really, I know they mentioned that they had a few other plans that ended up going to the Giants, but they didn't sound like very good Plan Bs to me. So some of these questions that reporters were asking were about the trade market. And we did hear about Kyle Tucker. Interestingly enough, doesn't mean he's being traded to the Yankees, doesn't mean he's being traded at all. But it was an interesting quote. Regardless, their GM actually was asked, hey, what's the deal? Is the owner allowing you to spend money? Are you planning on getting better through free agency via trade? And his answer, he didn't have to go this way, was we're looking like we're open to trading anybody. We're expecting to win the division, but what's so interesting is that they're still involved on Alex Bregman, which is still so puzzling. I cannot understand it. When you're talking about the choice between 2 players, Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, is the conversation that difficult? It doesn't seem like it would be, given how good of a player we know him to be. Yes, he's well documented to have struggled in the postseason, probably another problem the Yankees don't want to have. But I will say it is an interesting choice indeed. So, yeah, if Kyle Tucker's available, Brian Cashman, whether it can happen or not, should be down their back about trade proposals, everything you can possibly offer. I want to hear about it. And last but not least, Jake, we've heard about, do the Yankees really want to get involved in another 1-year rental of a player? And to which I would say probably not with a Scott Boras client. I would say that we got burnt once. I would say we probably lay off the gas pedal. But as far as I'm concerned with Kyle Tucker, you see a player like that and you throw 400, 500 million at him, you may be able to sign him early.
Yeah, and I mean, as we know, he's not a Scott Boras client, Kyle Tucker, so that opens up the door. I don't think that there's any chance in hell that they are going to try this definition of insanity thing, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Right. I don't think that they would ever do this again, regardless of what they say, if they didn't have, surety that he is going to re-sign. I have no issue with what they did with Soto. I would do it all over again. I would. I just would, of course, rather win the World Series next time. But all jokes aside, I do it all over again. What I wouldn't do is after that, after he left, I wouldn't sign Kyle Tucker to then watch him go to the Mets as well. So that's the thing. And what you can do, because this is going to be before arbitration, and other wheels are turning and what have you. The Astros have to make a decision whether or not Kyle Tucker is going to be a part of their future. And I think they're really just using winter meetings to decide on their own. Because if you get some really good value, well, you're going to have to sign Kyle Tucker before he hits free agency, because the Mets are going to swoop in and take him. He's better than Nimmo. He's better than the other outfielder. And obviously, Juan
Wouldn't the
Soto
Dodgers also be involved? I mean,
Dodgers would be involved. The Yankees would be involved.
$600 million. So
you're going to lose. And you know who actually would be a really good fit? The Red Sox. So there'd be all the teams that were in on Juan Soto would be involved in Kyle Tucker, and including the team that got Soto. So that's the thing, is that I kind of alluded to this point in one of our videos. I was like, does Cohen now, because keep in mind, Cohen was the big bad wolf and all that with all the money he had, but he had never actually made a big deal. Like this changes potentially the landscape of baseball, because now it's not just Cohen has the confidence he can get anyone. now the proof is in the pudding. They got Soto, and now with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, other players are going to be like, I want to play for that guy.
Yeah, we just saw Pete Alonso. They said he's interested to come back. I bet he is, right?
Yeah.
Once you've landed the big fish, and that's exactly what they did. Obviously, Ohtani became available. We didn't actually get a former offer from Cohen. I think in large part, he said, I want to go West Coast. I'm looking at the Dodgers, and I guess if you're going to get $700 million, by all means. But Cohen, at this point, we actually said before this winter meetings that Steve Cohen still had a lot to prove. Yes, he'd spent a lot of money before, but it was on two 40-some-year-old pitchers and sort of overpaying some guys to retain guys off the Mets roster. He really hadn't really flexed his muscles in free agency. Now, all of a sudden, Juan Soto becomes available, and it seemed like even if Hal Steinbrenner had gone up to that $800 million, wouldn't Steve Cohen have just went to $825? It felt like that. So having said that, it does change the landscape of the league, and rightfully so. When you have the money, you get to spend it. But as far as I'm concerned with the Yankees, I see it already in the comments about Cody Bellinger. Of course, the Yankees have plenty of ways to get better. In my mind, they've got to add 3 or 4 bats, right? We were expecting not just if Juan Soto returned, but there were going to be other guys, whether or not it was Teoscar Hernandez, whether or not you believed in Jason Dominguez, maybe some upgrades at infield, letting Gleyber Torres go, Rizzo being on his way out the door, what you do at first base. There were a lot of question marks with this team. It wasn't just going to be Soto, but now with Soto out the door, the flexibility to fill multiple roles has just gone through the roof. So everyone should be getting creative at this point, specifically Brian Cashman.
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing about roster building, and I say this all the time when I talk about the Rams, I say this when I talk about the Yankees. The thing about roster building is that in any sport, you have multiple avenues. It's not just one way or the highway. It's not just you can only sign free agents. It's not just you can only make trades. It's not just you can only draft players. You can only claim players off waivers. There are all different ways to build your roster, and the Yankees have done everything. You know, they've developed players like Aaron Judge and Clark Schmidt and Luis Heel and Austin Wells, but they've also gone out and traded for Giancarlo Stanton. They traded for Juan Soto. They've also gone out and gotten guys that, you know, were in the quote unquote bargain bin. You know, you found IKF, you found Didi Gregorius, right? So they've done that before. Aaron Hicks, and then they signed him for God knows why. But, you know, they've gone in the bargain bin, and they've also claimed players as well. I remember, what's his face? Brendan Drury, they also, you know, at one point. So there are different ways to play this game. You know, they're not one size fits all. And so the Yankees, and I've said, I don't think the market's great. I really don't think the market's great. But with that said, you can still, if you can go out and get a Kyle Tucker, you basically just did everything you possibly could to replace Juan Soto in the short term and the long term. If they were to go out and get Kyle Tucker, I'd forget Soto was ever a Yankee, truthfully, because to me, going out and getting him, he's not going to be a liability in the field. You're not going to be sitting there like, oh no, line drive to right field, which Judge is going to catch. But Soto, there were times where he would dive, and you're like, what is he doing? Does he understand like how big that situation is?
Fielding is not his strong suit for sure. Like Kyle Tucker's not going to have those problems.
Yeah.
And of course,
Tucker's a Gold Glove.
Tucker is not as good of a hitter as Juan Soto. There's a reason. Absolutely. And he's also not as young. So for those of you who wanted to get young, well, you got to draft well. If you want to get young, you need to draft and develop. Well, we can't do that. Are you going to draft and develop in 2025 right here in the next 2 months? Because one thing we do know, and we did get confirmation of this, is that the Yankees are essentially giving Caleb Durbin the keys at second base, at least as of now. And we haven't heard anything else other than the fact that that's our starting second baseman until further notice, unless something else comes to our table that makes us that much better as a team. But like I said before, Gleyber Torres in the second half of the season was a key contributor offensively. But other than that, he really had no impact. Caleb Durbin does all the little stuff. He's not going to be as sexy of a player. He's not going to hit 35 bombs. He's going to play fundamental baseball, which clearly the Yankees were missing if anybody watched the World Series. So having said that, when you look at how this Yankees team can get better, it's not just the Astros roster, but taking a peek at them, there are a few contracts that they have that are expiring that they probably want to get off the books. I know you mentioned before we went live, Framber Valdez, he's making almost $20 million a year. He's in the last year of his deal and he becomes a free agent. It's the same exact thing for Kyle Tucker. So for those of you saying, why would the Houston Astros trade this player? Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes timing does not work out for some of these teams. They retain free agents. They bring in guys via trade. And by the time you look at your books, you say, how exactly, the owner gave me a budget, am I going to bring back certain guys? Bregman becomes a free agent. Tucker's becoming a free agent next year. Valdez is becoming a free agent next year. Well, we've got to pick one or the other. It doesn't usually mean both. So maybe it leads to an opportunity for the Yankees. I know Bellinger, they're actively trying in Chicago to trade him. That would be a huge opportunity, huge upgrade defensively, athletically, and even offensively to put Cody Bellinger at first base over a much less fleet of foot Anthony Rizzo. So as much as we loved Anthony Rizzo, loved what he did in New York, thought he was pretty good in October. I wasn't expecting that level of output, but I will say I'm excited. I see it in the chat for the hot stove. Yeah, Arenado is a mistake. Completely agree. The Yankees need to be looking at players. Would you like a 30-year-old? Probably not. But if you see a player in his age 33, 34, 35, yeah, I think the Yankees should tap out on that.
Yeah, what's interesting is that for a team that had a deal in place to acquire him at the deadline, and they basically balked at the injury that he had, the back injury, Jack Flaherty has not been mentioned once. I don't know why. Flaherty's 29
you have to
years
imagine
old.
It would be short term, correct? I mean, you wouldn't expect Jack Flaherty to be signing a 7 or 8 year deal.
He might want to, but still, though, why are we not hearing anything about Jack Flaherty? I mean, this is a guy that pitched really well, right? I mean, he finished the season with a 3.17 ERA, 194 strikeouts, and he turned on October 15th. He turned 29. Like, I'm 4 years older than Jack Flaherty, or excuse me, 4 days older than Jack Flaherty. So I guess really my point is that this is a young pitcher. You talked about getting young. Valdez is pushing 32. I don't see why he's not at all being linked to the Yankees after there was a move that, they wanted to go out and get him. So it's a little weird to me. Maybe the playoffs is deterring them away, but this is the thing. You can't have both. You can't sit here and tell me we're not going after Jack Flaherty because of his injuries and his lack of playoff experience or playoff prowess, but then say, bring on Max Fried, because I have no idea what the hell you are doing if you do that. And why do I say that? Because we actually went through every single free agent. We did an episode not long after the World Series, Gary. We went through every single free agent. You know what we found? We found that Max Fried is a bad postseason pitcher. He's bad.
At least that's his numbers as of now. People
Yes.
take that information, by the way, as if you have a personal vendetta or that
I
this
have no
channel
personal
has
vendetta,
that.
yeah.
No, we are simply, if you go to Max Fried's stat line and you look at the regular season numbers, he's sensational. Absolutely sensational. He's not Clayton Kershaw, right? He's obviously, he's got a nasty curveball. He's got all the stuff. Soon as the bright lights have come on, his numbers look different. I don't know why. I don't really care why, to be quite honest with you. Could it change in the future? Sure. Absolutely. But the Yankees are in a position, I will say this, though, to sort of defend this look, is that you have to imagine Max Fried is not going to cost nearly as much money as Burns or any other option that potentially could leave the door open for a Kyle Tucker. But again, we did talk about this. We want to get into another bidding war because I would assume the New York Mets, anytime there's a player that really any team would want, you just can go ahead and pencil in the Dodgers and the Mets. And that's a problem. So as of now, people are not choosing to play for the Yankees. Like, people can get upset about that. They can get upset at us or anyone else that covers this team. Look, the proof's in the pudding. Look at what people are choosing to do. They're not looking out at Monument Park saying, I need to be a part of that. I want to be over there. No, guys are following the money, right? Guys are not forcing their way to the Yankees the same way that you saw, right? Trey Turner essentially forced his way to Philadelphia. We watched that happen. He didn't take $400 million from the Padres and instead took $341 to go play with Philly. Those are the type of decisions that we want to see. But before any of that happens, the Yankees need to make some stuff work. They need to start winning. And we don't mean pennants. I know you have a quote that Brian Cashman offered us, not us, but he actually said of late in regards to Juan Soto and his expectations and excitement for what it did. Do you mind sharing that quote just so people have an exact understanding of what was said?
I don't mind, but we call this noise pollution. Why would you ever put this out there? I mean, breathing this in is going to give you all sorts of health issues. Okay, what I'm saying here, and I think I'm justified in having an issue with it, Brian Cashman at winter meetings said Juan Soto took us to heights that I never would have expected. They didn't win the World Series. They didn't go on a 3-peat, a 5-peat, a 7-peat, an 11-peat. They lost the World Series. They won an American League pennant for the first time since 2009, which we were all very excited about. But if the GM of the freaking New York Yankees never expected to get to the World Series, because that's what he's saying, the heights? What heights? That's disturbing. That is a very disturbing comment.
Could you imagine walking off a stage at like Arizona State and your parents look at you straight in your face and say, wow, you really took this to heights I just never foresaw? It's basically a way.
Maybe if you graduated top in your class and you never showed that ability.
It's their way of telling you, wow, I didn't expect that to go as well as it did. It really paid dividends right away. Yeah, Brian, it does pay dividends to bring talent in. I know that the way baseball perceives contracts, by the way, guys, this is the way baseball fans are essentially bred to consume these contracts, regardless if it's to your team or not. We are bred to look at the Mets and say, well, they just spent $805. That's exactly what it was. $805 million. It's a waste of money. It won't be worth the contract. But guess what? Shohei Ohtani last offseason signed for $700 million. How many of us were talking about his $700 million contract during the World Series? He wasn't performing well. We were talking about the winning. That's all that mattered. All that mattered was the team building, getting the guy on the team to have an impact on the team. That's it. And all of a sudden, during free agency, the conversation transforms to, well, you just bought players. You don't think about that during the regular season. The Mets just really needed the player, and they insisted on it, and they flexed their muscles. That may piss people off. Yeah, 765 without incentives. Thank you, BC. But it is with incentive. Unless he outperforms the contract, which he will not do, it's $51.5 million a year. It's a ridiculous amount of money, but it's not our money. It's not their money. It is Cohen's money. So
what's funny?
He's going to opt in. What is funny?
He's going to opt out in 2029 because he's a mercenary, and he's going to go somewhere else. And I don't think and I said this to you.
I don't think he will.
I don't think he's ever going to have a season like he did with Aaron Judge.
Right. So, well, think of it this way. If he opts out and he doesn't have a season like he just had, he wouldn't get the money. You're talking about, will he surpass $55 million a year? No. Juan Soto will never do that again, which there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. That's an absurd amount of money to live up to that, but he's not going to, he'll opt right into that. Yeah. I'll take the 55 million. And that's part of the offer. So when you guys see 765, it wasn't 765. It was 805. So they beat our offer by about 40 million in a year. Okay. So there it was. That's what Heyman, that's what everybody else was reporting, was that Hal Steinbrenner had an opportunity to go up to $810 million. And at that point, us as the Yankees, we were saying, oh, okay, our owner's telling us we can't go past, this is not a sustainable payroll. Well, how sustainable is it to sign a player for $850 million?
Not at all.
What's Brian Cashman going to do with the rest of the payroll then? He already couldn't handle it with a player making $31 million.
And also, who's to say Cohen doesn't get up to 900? Like, that's the thing. It wouldn't have stopped. He wasn't going to stop. He even made it very clear we were never going to stop until we had him.
That's right. Yeah, there were actually, so there's people in the chat, by the way, asking
there's
about
a funny thing with
players. Yeah, so there's people asking about players, and they're saying, well, why in the world? I actually saw Dallas Braden brought this up, and I know they brought it up on their podcast. They were wondering, isn't it really insane that the best player in the game, in Shohei Ohtani, is not the highest paid player? And it's actually, at this point, not even close. It is kind of crazy, but you mentioned it's always how it works. It's timing.
Oh, you saw that?
Of course I saw it. It's exactly. It is timing. It's who's involved, who needs the player. And when you become a free agent and Steve Cohen is insisting on you being a part of his team, and it just so happens you played a year with the New York Yankees and got them to a World Series somewhere they hadn't been in 15 years, you think you're not going to break an all-time record? The timing of it was perfect, especially for Scott Boras. It couldn't have been better.
So the highest paid players by terms of average annual salary, according to Spotrac on the NFL, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. Patrick Mahomes is 12th. Like, where's Josh Allen? Josh Allen is 14th. There you go. Matthew Stafford's 15th.
You're basically rich or you're not. And the idea of comparing contracts to one another is just like so irrelevant, because obviously
it's always been about timing, though.
It is about timing. If Judge became a free agent, he would sign for $600 or $700 million tomorrow, but he's not.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, obviously, is Dak Prescott worth $60 million a year? No. But they had to pay him that because it's a elevator. It's a stock game, right? Don't suck. When your time is up, you get paid. If you suck, you don't get paid. It's really that simple. And like Patrick Mahomes signed a 10-year, $450 million deal. And this is with a salary cap. So
we just got some breaking news. Actually, that just came
did
through.
we?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Both the Mets, not really, but you take it for what you will. It could be perceived as good news. Both the Mets and the Yankees are the most aggressive teams for Garrett Crochet, per Ken Rosenthal.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I want
if they get Crochet. We are down expeditiously.
Yeah, here's my thing. To me, I understand the whole Crochet because he's like 25, right?
He is.
So I get that. I would sacrifice. I know it goes against what Passan was saying last night when he's like, they care more about age, it seems like, than talent at this point. Not that talent doesn't matter, but age is really mattering. I would throw away age here. This is baseball. This is not the NFL. This is not the NHL. This is not the NBA. These guys aren't becoming free agents at age 24. Like, you know what I mean? So Juan Soto is an anomaly because you normally don't get a guy at that level who is a free agent at 26 years old, right?
He was elite at 19. So there you have it.
So,
how many players are good at that age? It just doesn't happen.
So my issue with Crochet, I'm glad you brought this up. I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm going to come off as the biggest Crochet hater, but I think I'm very justified. We talked
Go ahead.
about
I know
this.
where you're going. Yeah, I know exactly.
We talked about this. First off, I don't want Crochet because it's going to cost an arm and a leg. The White Sox already told the Yankees, your prospects suck. So I don't know how you're going to get Crochet this time. I don't know how things change this time. But yeah, no, I don't want Crochet because I don't want to give up all the farm system. And it's not just because I'm a prospect hugger, so miss me with that. It's because I want to use those prospects to get Kyle Tucker, who should be, after Corbin Burns, should be the target right now. Corbin Burns is a free agent, wouldn't cost you a damn thing, prospect-wise. Go out and get him, then trade for Kyle Tucker. Now your offseason feels pretty good, and you can fill in the rest of the pieces. What I don't want...
if they say no? Wait, let's just say the Yankees decide, right? I asked you earlier, who would you put on the table, right? And you said this is a 1-year rental. We shouldn't have to go balls to the walls. We should be able to essentially come up with a fair package that you really want. And you put together a package that I thought was strong. But what happens, and this is absolutely fair from our audience, and they say, Houston's not trading you this player. And rightfully so. That does not surprise me in any bit. Houston may say, you guys can go pound sand. And that would not surprise me at all. I would say that is more likely than not. But having said that, what if the Yankees offer everything you can? They tell you, go kick rock. Shouldn't you pivot and go get the next best thing? Because you have to remember, if they tell you no, you now understand Kyle Tucker's only coming to the Yankees like really via free agency. So you need to get better via trade. And that could be Crochet, right? It could be other options. It could be Bellinger. It could be both. So that's the hard part. Do you protect prospects and hope that Kyle Tucker becomes available? Or do you ask first about Kyle Tucker? They tell you to go pound sand, and then you pivot and say, okay, Garrett Crochet has to be mission number 1 now. Your priorities have to change based on availability.
I think really for me, even if they say no about Kyle Tucker, I'm not just running to trade away prospects, because say you get Crochet and then tomorrow, you have somebody on the level of, let's just say, Tatis, and he and the Padres get into a huge argument, and now he's available. Like, and you just traded your entire, and you just traded your entire farm system to get Crochet.
You want to tell you why not?
Well, hear me out, Gary. This is how sports works. This is how it happens. Remember Odell Beckham Jr., how he went from the most recognizable NFL player? The Giants paid him, and then they traded him away to Cleveland. They wanted him to die in Cleveland. And then, he had his moments, whatnot. And then he started getting into it because his dad was, criticizing Baker Mayfield or whatever. And the Browns shipped him away, or they actually just cut him outright. This is what happens. Like, these guys become available in sports all the time. Jazz Chisholm is not somebody that if I was running the Marlins, I'm trading at the deadline. But the reality is these guys become available. Things change. Injuries happen. Oh, this prospect we didn't think was going to be that good, he ends up being that good. Carlos Correas don't get re-signed. So I think really the focus here has to be on Kyle Tucker, and they absolutely have to go after Corbin Burns. My issue with Crochet is that you're going to give up all those prospects. They already don't feel great about your farm system, so you're probably paying a premium, right? They might throw in Robert, but I don't even know if I want Robert, to be honest with you. But furthermore, Gary, Garrett Crochet, and I finally got to this point, Garrett Crochet rubbed me the wrong way. When we were talking around the deadline, I remember it was Michael K. And I know you and I discussed this.
Yeah.
Garrett Crochet, this is actually from his camp, said he refused to play in the postseason without a deal. A guy who's never pitched in the postseason before. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to have to look that up, but the White Sox have been pretty bad.
He's got some nerve to say that.
That is, well, I don't want that. I mean, I feel like I'm going to say this for the rest of time. You can't have it both ways. He did pitch in the playoffs, by the way. 4 games, 3 innings. Okay, he did pitch in the playoffs. But look, you pitched 3 innings. Like, you can't have it both ways. I can't come on here and criticize Juan Soto and say, you know what? You're just a mercenary. You didn't want to be a Yankee. I don't want you. But then say, yeah, Garrett Crochet doesn't even want to pitch for a team in the playoffs without a contract. Bring him on in. That rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't know anything about him. And then that came out. And I mean, he's a great pitcher. But at the same time, there are better pitchers right now currently in free agency that you can go get. And it's really just about the age. And for me, Crochet being 25 years old, he'll be 26 by June. That's great and all. But he had a 3.58 ERA last year. The year before, 3.55. he's good, but he also had a serious injury in 2022 that cost him the entire year. And I just think there are better fish in the sea that you don't have to give up prospects for.
Yeah, see, for me, when it comes to giving up prospects, you can give up someone good, someone that you would like to have, that you can just say, do we really need this player going forward? Yeah. Is this a necessity, right? And earlier I was saying, everyone was asking me, what in the world would Houston possibly want from the Yankees? And it's probably controllable pitching, right? And obviously an outfield replacement for Kyle Tucker, that would be a nice start. Well, that's what our package is going to look like. You talk about Spencer Jones, right? A lot of people think Jason Dominguez is part of the future. Well, maybe another organization says he could be part of our future. Yeah, we'll give you that player. Well, if you do that, if you give up, right, a prospect that any one of you who's listening today says, I really want to see what the future of that player looks like, you can usually replace them with money. Usually. Okay?
Yeah.
I told you before, Luis Gil may be someone. He obviously does not have a track record. This was his first year pitching over 30 innings in a big league season. So at that point, you're talking about a guy who really, this was his coming out party, right? And so a lot of other organizations are going to look at Luis Gil and say, that's a controllable asset that the Yankees potentially didn't trust. They obviously didn't in October. We can. And rightfully so. A lot of teams should believe that. He could potentially be part of my package. I'm looking at Spencer Jones and saying, is he someone I have to have in left field? I would probably say no. And at that point, when you just give up a starter, that's when you look at Fried or you look at Burns and you say, those guys can replace who I just gave up to get a position player in free agency. So that is part of my psyche, is when I give up somebody, my plan is to replace them somehow. It just has to be done. You can't just give up a prospect and say, let me give up this shortstop. And then after that, you just go sign a 1-year like crap stain. It doesn't work. So I don't know, Jake. I think my perspective on this is that the Yankees are in a position where if you wait around for Kyle Tucker, most often when a player like this is traded, it is not at the deadline. It is most often in the offseason. Because when you're talking about trading a player like this, when you offer to give a Kyle Tucker, who's a star, someone at the deadline, they end up giving you pennies on the dollar. You're going to give me half a season of this player. Manny Machado, you're going to give me half a season of this player. How much do you expect for this player? And rightfully so, you hardly get anything. But when we had to give up, right, Michael King, we would love to have Michael King right about now. We gave up something good. Why? Because it was the offseason. Brian Cashman doesn't usually do jack at the deadline. When was the last big move we made at the deadline?
And it's funny, when we were talking about that earlier, I was saying the same thing. Normally, a normal organization with a good GM, because I don't think Cashman's good. I'm just going to say that right now. I don't. I actually think okay. Hal is an okay owner. I do. I'd probably say he's a good owner. I don't think he's great, but I think he's good. He's not his father, but I think he's good. Cashman, I think, is okay to not very good, and I feel like he's regressed over time too, because I think he's gotten so obsessed with, he tried this and he tried this, and I know you get creative. You're a creative person. You want to keep being creative. I think he's run out of creative ideas, and that's that. But no, I think that's the thing, is that if you were another organization, or if you're a fan or you're covering another organization, you'd feel good about reevaluating at the trade deadline. It's the midway point in the season. If you need another bat, you can go out and do that. But I don't trust Cashman, to your point. Delos meatballs, and I will give...
What was the other guy's name that we got?
Mark Leiter Jr. I will give him credit. He pitched really well in the postseason. He was really good.
Well, didn't he show up halfway?
What do you mean?
Because he wasn't he wasn't pitching in the division series.
No, in the World Series, I thought he pitched pretty well.
So eventually, there was some level of impact, and I think we were both pleasantly surprised, which I'm actually glad you brought that up. But
I want to give him this credit. In
totality, when we saw, it was Jazz Chisholm, Leiter Jr., and Delos meatballs, we were just scratching our heads, because literally everyone told us they're going to get a righty, they're going to get a lefty, they're going to get a big bat. It won't just be Chisholm. And then all of a sudden you look up and say, oh, you just got me Jazz Chisholm? And Jazz Chisholm was a nice little fit. Obviously, he didn't play very well in the World Series. But having said that, or in the postseason period, But that was our deadline. Why would I expect Kyle Tucker if all of a sudden he became available? You know what they tell us? We're half a season from his free agency anyway, so we're going to wait to get him for free. All it's going to cost us is money, and then you turn around and say, oh, shit, Steve Cohen's behind my back. So why would you wait for free agency? It's not an option.
That meme with the guy who has all the muscle and then the skeleton, and he's like behind your back.
Let me put this on the screen so that people have a perfect understanding of where I'm coming from, because I love this comment.
Could not agree with it more.
I don't want any more rentals, fellas. If they trade for Tucker, they need to have him under contract. So here's the catch. If you're trading for a player, and we've seen this happen plenty before, you trade for the player. Before that trade is finalized, you get that agent on the phone and say, what's the number that we need to put out? Is it 450? Is it 475? Is it 480? Is it 500 million? Whatever number we need to put out there to get you to sign on the dotted line, if we ever traded. Same thing with the Mariners, same thing with the Red Sox, same thing with the Dodgers. You trade with a player like this, you're giving up a lot. Ink me a deal the second you become a member of my team, which is the point here. So I love that you brought up this comment. We would hate to sign or trade for another player in a one-year situation, because it just leaves us in a situation where you turn around and say, you want to be in Monument Park, you want to do all this cool, fancy stuff. All that stuff is important to us, but we have no assurance it's important to the world. It's important to this said player that we're talking about. We have no clue what's important to them. So my advice would be that the Yankees tread lightly with who they trade for, and they get smarter about the risks that they're taking. And obviously they're in a position now where they're going to be having to take somewhat of a risk. And I don't know if I trust Brian Cashman to take that risk right now.
I don't either. I think this is a really good, kind of explanation. I would probably say it's a really good kind of comparison of where I see this going if they go out and get Kyle Tucker. And I've brought this up before, and I'll say it again. Okay? Matt Olson. So after Freddie Freeman leaves and goes to the Dodgers, the Braves immediately start courting the A's for Matt Olson. A lot of Yankee fans wanted Matt Olson, right? And the Braves jumped right in. They got Olson. They gave up Christian Pache, Shea Langoliers, Joey Estes, and Ryan Cusack. I don't think any of them are great. Guess what? With that, he was signed to an extension. You can right do away. This, folks. What? Oh, right away. No, I thought you said, by the way. I was like, what?
No, I had nothing to add. It's perfect. It's exactly what happened. And guess what, guys? We sit here and clap our hands for what the Atlanta Braves GM does, rightfully so. He does a spectacular job. What do the Braves do? What's their model? Why is Ronald Acuna Jr. currently playing for less than $13 million a year?
They pay their players to get out in front.
Put money in front of their face before they reach free agency. If it's a Scott Boras client, he's going to advise them to wait anyways. So you need to look at who are people represented by, which team are we dealing with, and if we deal with this player, is he potentially going to be open to signing an extension right now? You look at Scott Boras and you look at Juan Soto. Did any one of you in the comment section, Jake, this is actually a question for you as well, did you think there was even a chance Juan Soto would have signed early?
There was 1% chance.
I would have put it at literally at 600 miles below the Earth's crust. Zero. Absolutely zero chance. I never in my life looked at Juan Soto, and he said some of the right things, right? We put a mic in his face. What's he going to say? Hey, you love being a Yankee? No, I hate it. He's going to say good things, right? Love the fans. What's he going to say? These fans suck. I'm going to go across town. Of course he's not going to say that.
That's why I got a lot of respect for Altuve, because he told it, and we talked about this to a degree yesterday, the whole silliness of, They need a better manager because they're not motivated. It's like, that's on the grown men that play baseball for a living. You can't be serious pinning that on the manager. Oh, they don't have the motivation. That's on these professional athletes. Well, it's the same thing. I say it all the time when, you have these agents. Oh, don't blame the player, the agent. The agent, you hired the agent. The agent works for you. So let me be clear here. When we were talking about Jose Altuve and he said, I don't want to go anywhere else, Scott. I want to stay in Houston, get it done. I'm staying in Houston. Scott Boras, you know what he said? Said, okay, we'll get it done. Because you can strong arm the guy that you're paying to represent you. What you can't do is sit there and act like he owns you. Sit there and act like he decides where you go. He's advising you. It would be, quite honestly, contract law. This would be illegal. Your agent you hire can't automatically strong arm you and tell you have to take the deal. And they can't throw ultimatums at you because you would be in trouble. That is a illegal thing to do as somebody that is representing another client. So
can I ask you a question?
I'm so over that, Gary. The whole, Soto has Scott Boras, and Scott Boras is just, he's a bully. Like, Juan Soto couldn't have stayed with the Yankees if he wanted to. Bullshit. Juan Soto is a mercenary. He always was. Jose Altuve is, whether people are going to get offended by it or not, he's like a Kobe Bryant that wants to stay with his team. That's who he is. Say what you will about Jose Altuve. I know every Yankee fan hates him. I got a lot of respect for a guy that's willing to stick it out because right now, the Astros are not going up. They're on their way down.
Yeah, and it's just, I've really got to ask you this. I agree, by the way. I'm going to ask you this question. When people talk about Scott Boras and doing business with his clients, you have to remember one thing, and it's something that you've sort of alluded to just a second ago. It's that he works for the player, and he essentially is a smoke signal that I am going to get the absolute top dollar from somebody. Now, the player is going to tell me, does that somebody need to be a certain somebody's, or can it be any somebody? Right? And I believe, it's some form or another. Juan Soto said, get me top dollar. That's the way it came across, and that's the way it looked after signing. Get me top dollar. And I said before, it's perfectly fine if you want to do that, but you need to tread lightly, because if a player hasn't stated that he wants to play with you before arriving to your team, don't make the assumption that he's loyal to you when you look across the aisle and you see which agent is representing him. If Scott Boras is his agent and he's never said he wants to play for your team, and then you trade for him, right, in a one-year rental, don't look at this player and expect him to Derek Jeter it. He was never doing that, right? Michael Kay got on Yes Network and said the tea leaves are there. If you really want to have an understanding of the player, you really are shocked to see this result. This result shouldn't have shocked anybody. It doesn't make him a bad person, but when we're mortgaging our future and trying to have this long-term 15, and for the Yankees' sake, it was 16-year marriage, I don't know why anyone thought this is just getting done, right? I just don't get that. And Kyle, we appreciate the membership. He says, get me Bellinger and Horner from the Cubs. Yeah.
Bellinger, I'm all over Bellinger.
What do you think about Horner?
I'm out on Horner. I would rather see. Here's the thing: Horner is a guy that's going to hit for average if you call 273 average, which I think is fine. 708 OPS, 7 home runs. Doesn't have a lot of power. Is going to steal 31 bases. Like he gives you something. I'm not going to say he doesn't. Obviously, the speed is there. The range. He's a good defender. Doesn't strike out. Really his whiff rate is among the 99th percentile, but doesn't really walk a lot, right? Chases quite a bit, despite the fact he, doesn't whiff much. Very, very bad bat speed in the 7th percentile. Doesn't hit the ball hard at all.
Well, Bellinger doesn't have great bat speed either.
No, I know, but
getting to free agency, that was a big, snag for him.
I don't know. I just think because Horner would be playing second base, I'd rather have them roll with Caleb Durbin. You could trade for Horner at the deadline if you want to. I wouldn't get him now.
We're just not. That's the problem, is that anytime we say, well, we can just have
Yeah,
that
I know.
option. We can kind of see
They don't really.
What do we really need if we're trailing Baltimore by 2 games, right? And O'Neal's hitting the ground running, they're winning. You really trust to look behind you to Brian Cashman and say, hey, you see that we need a left-handed arm.
I don't trust Brian Cashman as far as I could throw him.
No, Brian Cashman is probably going to go get 2 serviceable at best arms that the Yankees can spin out there, and you're going to say, how does this guy make an impact? He'll probably find a way some way or another to make an impact, but that's the type of deadline you expected. And I want to get to this super chat from Slim Lewis. We appreciate the
Thank
5.
you,
Thank
Slim.
you for supporting the show. He says, I think this Soto thing has made Judge even more popular with Yankees fans. Judge took a discount to stay here and be a Yankee for life. Agree. Jake, before I kick it over to you, obviously, this is an obvious agreement, but Slim, I want to remind you of one thing, is that people are going to forget how we got here. And his narrative is still to be written. He needs to prove he can hit in postseason baseball. And if 2 or 3 years go down the road where he's having sort of his Clayton Kershaw battle, this historically great player, for whatever reason, he's just not playing well in October again, we're not going to look back and be like, well, at least he's loyal, unlike Soto. No, we're just going to look at him and say he didn't perform at the time Yankees need to perform. So I agree in the short term, Aaron Judge is liked more today than ever. He just is. Because
I think
we
he needed
know
this
exactly
in a
what
way.
he gave. You think so?
Yeah, I think this is a huge boost for him because, it is kind of a reminder. I think I got to, comfortable with Juan Soto. I mean, you remember I said it's almost more fun to watch Juan Soto because, he works every at-bat. Aaron Judge, as the season went on, he was getting a lot better working counts. And then he went into that slump right around the postseason. But
yeah,
what I will say is I know this guy, no matter what the season, as long as there's not an injury, Aaron Judge is Aaron Judge. And I feel like I'm a broken record. We've already talked about this, but we watched Juan Soto on the San Diego Padres, and that was not impressive. Like, there's a reason why they kept Fernando Tatis Jr. over Juan Soto. There's a reason.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a reason why they trade him away when they're a contender. Like, do you think if they trade away, Padres probably win the World Series if they don't trade away Juan Soto, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
think about
my mom
it.
Still to this day, they all live in downtown San Diego, diehard Padres fans, and they still to this day say, yeah, Juan Soto is just not that good of a player. They saw what he did with us. They're like, I don't know what happened. This is the player we were watching in San Diego was just, no one came to see this player play. He was like this all-time great player that was like in quicksand. We have no idea what's going on. Well, guess what? When you're making $51 million, and then when you do that little opt-out, opt-in, whatever you want to call it, and you're making $55 million a year to lead the Mets, right? Because it's no longer Lindor. It's not his team. It's your
I know.
team.
Now that he's already paid, do you think this is going to get better?
We're going to find out, won't we?
It's so funny. I was just having
I
this
can't wait to watch him
conversation
track
with
down a
somebody.
fly ball. Not that it's
Oh,
fair,
my
because
God.
obviously we know his flaws. It's okay to not be good
Yeah.
at defense. When he misses a fly ball, Yankees fans are going to be going hammer time with it. We are.
And you know what? To be fair, Yankees fans, and I want to say this after thank you, Ed. Judge played in the playoffs like we didn't pay OT. That's funny.
It's
I want to say this. I want to back the Yankees fan base here because we were so excited to have Juan Soto. It changed the outlook on this team, a team that I think a lot of people have caught on to the last few years, half decade, maybe a decade now. This is not your father's Yankee team. Well, Gary, we know this is your father's
It's literally not my dad's
It's
Yankees
literally
team.
not your dad's Yankee team. But all jokes aside, Juan Soto had that renewed, that was great. Juan Soto had that renewed energy to this team. And you immediately saw just the relationships and just the like Oswaldo Cabrera was talking about, and all these guys, right? How he was like a captain. And that was the thing, is that the entire season, while we were enjoying it, let's also understand we weren't able to fully enjoy it without interruption. The media pushed this Juan Soto to the Mets narrative from day one, and they did not stop. And the fans, the Mets fans, constantly with their stupid Photoshops, their stupid Photoshop of Steve Cohen wearing a Darth Vader outfit or whatever the hell. It was non-stop. You weren't able to really enjoy it. And really, the Yankees weren't going to be able to enjoy it. And Yankees fans weren't going to be able to fully enjoy it if they didn't win the World Series. And they didn't. And so now the Mets fans, and you said this earlier off air, the coverage hasn't been covering Juan Soto. It's been almost a, look at that, what a joke, or pointing and laughing, essentially.
To explain my point, it's been very trolly, which is weird that baseball is in this position. It reminds me a lot of when Cleveland was left by LeBron, and suddenly it was like, ha, look at these losers. And then they're panning to coverage in the bar, and they're like watching people cry and burn jerseys. It's like, obviously it's not that serious to lose a player via free agency, especially in the game of baseball. This is
burning baseball. A 22 jersey with no name on the back. What are you doing?
Waste of money, complete joke. It's Jacoby Ellsbury's jersey anyways, you cheap bird. You didn't buy his jersey. Stop lying. So it's obviously silly. The average Yankees fan just goes, well, that shit sucks. Now what's next? That's what it is. That sucks. We just lost a player who's 26, obviously having someone of youth. And then now you're in a position, we just called ourselves a win now franchise. Our plans had to do with him included. But now that he's gone, how aggressive are you? And a lot of our number one target right now is probably Kyle Tucker. Well, he's set to be a free agent after this year. We don't want him to get to free agency. That'd be a nightmare. Because at this point, what chance, this is actually the question I was going to ask you. If Kyle Tucker became a free agent and we were just at the winter meetings next year, right this second, what chance would you say that the Yankees would be the highest bidder on Kyle Tucker?
It's weird because they absolutely could, but I feel like the Blue Jays are always going to be the highest bidder. I'm still waiting on the Blue Jays bid on Juan Soto to come out. $1 billion.
What's the number, would you say? If you had to put a number on it, what chance would you say? Would you say it's more likely than not?
I actually would.
Really?
I would. Yes. You know why? I think, again, the billion, well, not again. We haven't said it on this live stream. So if you guys haven't seen the videos, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. Don't forget, Hal Steinbrenner has allocated over $1 billion to 3 players that didn't sign with the Yankees. They have already showed their hand. They have a lot of money to spend. And the way I see it, and I was thinking about this actually after we recorded the Kyle Tucker video, and I'm thinking, Steve Cohen is probably going to go into bully mode now that he can. But I also feel like, and yes, it's an ego thing, but he has to be careful not to go over the top. And I don't necessarily think he would do what he did, in this case. I feel like he knew he had to get Juan Soto as kind of, this is the start. This is the foundation of what the next era of New York Mets are going to be. Kyle Tucker, you wouldn't now have the need where I have to get this guy. I'm going to bid to the moon and the stars. And that's where I feel like the Yankees, they would need him. And you look at next year's free agency class, it's not great. It's him, it's Vladdy Guerrero Jr. Bats-wise. Obviously, pitchers, it's outlandish. But that's it, Gary. So I do think the Yankees would be the highest bidder. They'd have no excuse not to. And let's just say they don't win the World Series, which it looks like they're not going to if they don't, in a hurry, replace some of these guys.
They better put the foot on the gas. They are not close.
If they don't win the World Series, there's no reason for them not to be, large spenders. So that's kind of how I see it. I do also, a lot of it really does, and this is another thing with Kyle Tucker, a lot of it is hindering. It's based on essentially what they do, because we know they're interested in Teoscar Hernandez. He could very well go back to the Dodgers. He could go to the Red Sox. I know the Red Sox are offering him a pretty competitive offer. Carlos Santana, they're interested in. Christian Walker, they're interested in. Max Fried. If they pay a lot of money, they might just say, you know what, we're not even going to bother adding another player. They might just actually do that. Now, I wouldn't agree with it. I think it's dumb as hell. But that's the thing, is we need to see what happens. I did not at all. And Curry said, by the way, Jack Curry, they like Burns and Fried. They like Fried because he's a ground ball starting pitcher. They like Walker, Santander, Hernandez, Bellinger, Bregman, not so much. All of those names are possible. When I hear that, I'm like, well, it's one thing to like. It's not they love, and it's not that they're making aggressive offers for, because it's easy to say you like a bunch of players that are the top players on the market. But Gary, if they add Santander, like, how does that change what they do? And I guess I could see it on the other side of it. If they decide to add Santander and, you know, let's just say they add Teoscar Hernandez, are they doing that because now they're opening the door to trade away Jason Dominguez? They are at that point in that mind of theirs. They're like, you know what? We are not going to build for the long term. We are going to focus on win now. It's more important to win with Aaron Judge than it is to have this like sustained success when the time comes. And if we're not ready, we have the money we can just spend to get there, but we can't hold on to this prospect who clearly hasn't shown us enough, and we need to win right now. Like, there are different directions they could go in, Gary.
I mean,
and if they go out and get
Jason Dominguez, I mean, I feel like people are making Jason Dominguez seem like the future of the franchise. He's not that. I'm here to tell you right now.
The problem, Gary, is that we don't know what he is. We saw bits and pieces, and to be fair, I don't really think he got a great shot. He was banged up, and then he comes back, and like, all right, good luck, kid. Barely played in the postseason. I mean, this would be the year where you know who Dominguez is, which is why I don't think they're going to trade him, right? I really don't. I think they're going to let him play out this season. And if they like what they see, he could very well be a long-term piece. But if they don't, then they will probably ship him out at the deadline.
Yeah, okay. So to kind of revert back to the Kyle Tucker stuff, in terms of availability, being the highest bidder, because you were talking about potential allocation. Potential. They didn't spend a dime. Not $1. I get it. You offered $760 million. It's a ton of money. But at the end of the day, they did not spend a single dime. Not one penny did they spend. Okay? And that is where I'm at with this, is that situations are fluid. They just are. Okay? You're going to look at different teams. There's going to be somebody. It won't just be the Yankees who desperately want Kyle Tucker. That's my thing. Did anyone really think that Juan Soto was going to be heavily pursued by the Dodgers this offseason? I sure didn't. I think a lot of people
I give the Dodgers a lot of credit for offering that much.
You just kind of assume the Dodgers are going to offer like $450 million for like 5 years. They're obviously deferring Ohtani's money. So probably front-loaded, like absolutely, right? Long behold, we see the offer. The Dodgers offered north of $600 million for Juan Soto.
Insane.
What are we talking about? So having said that, they offer that for Juan Soto. Why wouldn't they offer $500 million for Kyle Tucker? Kyle Tucker's a star. He is. Any team could essentially use him. And when you get into a situation, into a bidding war with these major markets, you end up spending a lot more money than you otherwise would have if you signed them earlier. So the only way you're going to do that is by acquiring the asset, which I did say, and I saw in the chat, just not exactly sure where. It doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't. So
Kyle, thank you for the 5. During Yankees hot stove, Cashman's phone rang and he denied it. That could have been an important deal to get something done. Hope that wasn't the case. It's funny.
Wait, I don't understand. What happened?
He's saying that Cashman's phone rang when he was on the hot stove, and he ignored it.
Well, he doesn't get any damn deals done anyway, so.
Yeah, well.
No worries, Kyle.
Yeah. Well, I would say this. I mean, if it was any other GM, I'd be like, oh, but it's Cashman. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Slim Lewis, thank you for the 10. Mets fans think we hate them. I don't hate the Mets. I really don't think about the Mets. They aren't in the American League. They aren't our rivals. Rarely give them a thought. I wish them well. That's how I wish I could be. But the problem is, you know, as you've learned, and to any Yankee fan who likes the team that I'm about to mention, no disrespect to you. But when you have an experience with a certain, you know, fan base, it can lead to you not liking that team or that fan base. And you're aware, obviously, there are good seeds and bad seeds, and I'm totally aware of that. But just the overwhelmingly negative, toxic, you know, reactions and interactions I've had with Lions fans on Twitter, I don't like Lions fans. Now, there's probably good Lions fans. I know there's a Lions fan in here that's a Yankee fan. I like you. But that toxicity makes me not like them. I had that same thing with the Mets. You know, I have a few Mets fans. I have friends that are Mets fans. You know, I had no issue with them. And it's like the nonstop just pushing. I mean, we would tweet out. I remember when we first started this, we tweet out the podcast, right? Tweet out the podcast, Gary. Every time it was, you're not going to get Juan Soto back. It was like nonstop. Mets fans would just be in the comments section.
I told you,
like,
baseball is just it's just a kid's trolley game on Twitter. We know it's funny that you say that about different fan bases. I cannot stand Yankees Twitter. The average person on Yankees Twitter is just a total loser and just a
not
total
everybody
goon. We're talking about the average person. They are awful on Yankees Twitter. Just, oh my gosh, everything is just horrible. You would think that nobody had a nuanced conversation ever. And yet you'll have a YouTube show. And Jake, I told you, we start a YouTube show and we do it this way. We try to go have a deeper dive into these conversations. Smarter, normal people are going to crowd around and we can have a real conversation. Not where we all agree, but where we all at least attempt to think like an adult. And there are a lot of people, especially on social media, that's not where you're going to find the best fans. You're going to find the best fans with an actual community like here or at the stadium. People who invest their hard-earned money on the team. So when it comes to answering that super chat about hating the Mets, I'm going to give my own answer because, Jake, I know you feel a little bit different than I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate any team because in actuality, I want you to remember something. When Juan Soto was raking and hit a walk-off, well, not a walk-off home run, but essentially the clinching home run to send us to the World Series against Cleveland, I firmly remember everybody tweeting, blank check, bring this guy back, blank check. It doesn't matter what we spend. I would tend to agree with that. Who gives a rip how much we able to spend? We're the Yankees. We make more money than every team, and it's not even fairly close. So when people say, give them a blank check, and then you get to free agency, and the person who wrote the biggest blank check gets the player, why are we pissed? It doesn't make any sense. For me personally, if Hal Steinbrenner had matched at 805, personally, I would have said, you know what? I don't really understand how we got this high, but we sort of had to get the player. I can't really blame him. But if I watch Mets fans are like, I can't believe Hal is just ruining the league by spending $810 million, I would look at him and say, did you not see our tweets? We literally said unlimited funds. Who cares what we pay this guy? Then somebody gave him a Looney Tunes amount of money, and then we're like, I'm jealous of that. Why? You should be looking at that and saying, okay, if I was a wealthy owner, then wouldn't I want to impose my will on the league and bring in great players? Because we watched Bryce Harper become a free agent. We just watched him walk over. No meeting. We didn't hop on the phone. We didn't fly him out on Delta first class to come to Yankee Stadium. We didn't do any of those things. Why? Because we decided we don't need to spend the money. We don't need to do it.
No, I agree with you. I just think when it comes to Cohen, I can understand why Yankee fans find him really annoying. I mean, you know, the whole fraud thing, and he's just not. He's a guy that really threatens, I think, the sport in general, because when you have a guy that'll just outbid everybody, that's a problem. Like, we just saw it for the first time, so we don't know if it's going to be a problem, right? But if Steve Cohen is making it so I don't know if I'm going to be able to re-sign my guy back because he's waiting to hit free agency to go to the Mets, that's a problem. And people can say the Dodgers are an issue, but still, Aaron Judge came back to the Yankees. They didn't even pursue Aaron Judge, right? And Juan Soto, they gave him an offer, obviously a hefty offer, but they knew he wouldn't take it because he was only going to go to the highest bidder. The Dodgers, they're using the loophole with the deferrals and all that, but they still are building, like you're talking about from the prospect realm. There's a lot of homegrown players on the Dodgers too. So I don't want to sit here and act like that's not the case. The Mets, I want to see how long it takes for them to just go full on, because this is actually what I want to say. The Yankees are demonized for how much they spent in the 70s and 80s and all of that. I think the Mets are about to be way worse and potentially ruin the sport. And that is just based on the whole, now the narrative is, well, Steve Cohen can outbid anybody, right? He can outbid anybody. He's going to bid it. He's going to do whatever. That's not good. That's not good. So, the fact that he has unlimited funds and, I think we could end up, I'm not saying I want it, but I think we can end up in salary cap territory if it gets bad enough. I do.
You want me to tell you why I disagree? So, saw it in the comments. I was already thinking it. Mm-hmm. We did it. And not only did we do it, when you look at the ratings of major, sure, but when it comes to Major League Baseball, I don't even care if it's to this level. It's really the same thing because the level is always going to change. There's always going to be someone richer at some point. It won't be the New York Mets. In 25 years, when there's a new owner that comes in richer than Steve Cohen, they're going to look around and say, wow, the Toronto Blue Jays are just bullying everybody, right? That's the way it goes. So my thing is this. Baseball is not like the NBA, where you have two great players on a team and they can essentially dominate the game with a couple three-point shooters and defenders. You can essentially manipulate the results by signing one or two guys, okay? My thing is that baseball is so difficult regardless of who's on your roster. In my opinion, the Dodgers had the best roster by far. And yet, what did Mookie Betts tell you? Mookie Betts said the Padres probably should have beat us. The Padres should have beat us. They just got rid of Juan Soto. It goes to show you these players are important, but how your team plays in October is even more important. And I would say, for baseball's sake, no one watches these teams that don't spend money anyway. The teams that don't get the free agents, do you realize Mets-Dodgers is going to be one of the most watched championship series this upcoming season if it happens? It's good for baseball. And the reality is, the best team a lot of times just lose anyway. The Mets could show up and sign Burns. They sign whoever else, right? Fried. They could sign anyone. And yet, you get to the season, guys don't perform well in October. Aaron Judge was a literal dud in October. He did nothing. Okay? So a lot of these players, you can sign them, you can bully ball people. It's frustrating. I totally get it. But where my jealousy ends is the fact that baseball is like hockey. The hottest team just finds a way to win, and obviously talent can help put you over the top. So I'm of the nature that if my team was doing this, I know I would be excited. I know I would be happy. It's just not right now. It's unfortunate. We were close. I thought personally Hal Steinbrenner put up a valiant effort in terms of his offer. And I thought if he wanted to be a Yankee at that number, $760 million, that number probably should have gotten it done if he wanted to be here, but he chose to go somewhere else. Now that that's happened, I'm not going to turn my back on the concept that a rich person should invest their money into players that are commanding hundreds of millions of dollars.
No, I get that. I do. And it's not necessarily just Juan Soto, right? And I think I made a decent point. I don't know if it was fully understood, but basically I'm saying it's not an issue right now. Just getting Juan Soto doesn't mean we're not going to have a salary cap. The lockout is coming. I don't know if I would say the lockout is coming. I'm saying it could come. I'm saying we could see a lockout where there is a discussion to finally have a salary cap. And I'm saying this could happen if Steve Cohen does what he did this year and goes out and bullies teams to get Corbin Burns and bullies teams to get Kyle Tucker next year. That becomes an issue because you can't just have essentially one team has just unlimited funds and the rest, like, what's going to stop the Mets from pushing the Dodgers at one point? And then it becomes
within reason before. Like it was.
Yes.
I know people thought, oh, it's way over the top. The Dodgers, they got Ohtani, they got Freeman, they got Betts.
That's my point.
But they also had Jason Hayward in the outfield starting games.
Exactly.
Like
but if Cohen comes out and he's like all-star, you see what I'm saying? I know you defend the spending, and I totally get it.
Yeah.
But it's more so the thought. Now, he might not do that, right? But if all of a sudden you look at the Mets lineup and you see Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker, Francisco Lindor,
Vladdy Jr.
Vladdy
like,
Jr.
What happens if an owner says, I don't give a rip what we spend? Our payroll is going to be $685 million. The next highest will be $350. It's a huge disparity at that point. So it's going to be interesting to see how this ages because, like you said, it could just be Juan Soto, or
it could be,
we could end up not being able to trade for Kyle Tucker, and we don't expect to be able to trade for him. We don't expect Houston to want to trade, but we do expect the Yankees to try and get that player. But it's not their job to let us get the player. But what happens if Tucker now goes to the Mets? What happens if Alonso now re-signs? They go get Burns. They literally choose to get everybody. That's not a jealousy thing. At that point, you have to say, okay, well, what does baseball want, right? What does Commissioner Manfred want? Do you want guarantees of matchups in October, or do you want somewhat of a wild card in performance? I see your point, but obviously,
that's why I'm concerned.
We have to see how this ends up going.
Because, I mean, if you go out and get Clay Holmes and you're getting Sean Manaea, no one's going to be like, they're ruining baseball. But I mean, if you go out there and, you're like, all right, well, we're going to get Corbin Burns. We're going to get Vladdy Jr. We're going to get Kyle Tucker. We already have Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. And, oh, by the way, we're going to go out and we're going to trade for another superstar and we're going to sign this ace. It's like at that point, you just broke the major leagues. You are going to cause a lockout because teams are essentially feeling like, hey, hold on. There was a loophole put in place for the small market team and the Dodgers used it and we complained, but we let it go. But now you're telling me the Mets are going to come in here and they're going to stack their entire lineup. They're going to have 5 MVPs out of 9 in their lineup. No, that would be a problem. And so that's what I'm saying is that it could be a serious problem moving forward. We don't know, but I will say this right now. This winter meetings is going to be very interesting because what you can't have is I need to trade my player away because I have no chance of signing him because Steve Cohen is lurking. You can't have that. Crazy. I think it's a bad look on baseball to, you're the organization, you are known, you are the league that is known for having a farm system, okay? We're not talking about the G League, we're not talking about the practice squad in the NFL. You have a legit farm system. Obviously the NHL does as well. But you have a legit farm system. And if all of a sudden you are incentivizing, you are allowing the incentivizing of a player to leave his homegrown place, I think that's a bad look on baseball. Look, I'm not saying that players have to stay, but it looked a lot better for baseball when Aaron Judge chose to stay with the Yankees and took less money than it does for Juan Soto to leave the Nationals and then go and play for 3 other teams. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. And Ed W with the super chat, we appreciate the 20. Ed, thank you for supporting the show. And we want to read this comment. He says, grew up a Mets fan and they refused to sell handicap season tickets to my granddad in their worst year when ticket agents were holding ticket to pocket money. Yankees sold my granddad whatever handicaps we wanted. That's the Mets culture. Now, obviously, Ed, that sucks. But, we did hear the story, and I'm sure you saw it as well, that part of the decision-making of Juan Soto of going to the Mets wasn't just about money. It was about some story that they made up with security and Juan Soto. Now, am I saying that the entire story just never happened? No, It very well, something could have happened where Juan Soto was upset for a couple of hours. But to suggest that he was sour from something that happened in May and it made an impact on where he went when he ended up going to the highest bidder, It was quite ridiculous. So I'm sure the Mets aren't this toxic environment that hate families. I'm sure it's not that. But to suggest that the Mets are just this, it's Zootopia and everyone just can't wait to be a part of this family. Anytime you take a job interview and they tell you, hey, Gary, I just want you to know we're a family here. You know what it says? It sucks.
Hey, do you know who says family all the time?
Who?
Jessica in Suits.
Yeah, exactly.
And everyone's getting fired left and right. Yo, we're such a family. Next episode, fired.
Has anyone ever been part of and basically been hired by an employer and they told you it's going to be a family? We're going to collaborate on these different projects and we're going to make sure that we get things done in a timely manner because we're a family. We all like to help each other. You know what that really means? I'm going to throw this work on your chest.
I had a company that bragged about their culture so much, and it was like a horror movie.
So the players will talk about your culture. Don't leave it to reporters to talk about, oh, they gave them a family suite. They're a family organization. Let the players, if Aaron Judge thinks the Yankees are a family organization, then let Aaron Judge tell the story. Don't have some agent tell a reporter.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Steven, appreciate the 5. When the George Steinbrenner was spending more than anyone, I am sure you didn't have an issue with it. Well,
I didn't.
Here's the thing. I actually had an issue with it to a degree.
You did?
Yes, for the reason that I think he got way too carried away. Just obviously, I didn't really live around the time he was going crazy with the spending, right?
Right.
But just going back through history, like trading away guys like Roberto Kelly and just giving up on prospects when prospects, I think, were better back in the day than they are now, which is kind of funny. You have all this
they all just come from
data.
All the good players are coming from Japan. All our prospects just end up needing until year 8 or 9 to become good. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but it's like trading guys like Roberto Kelly away. We already know there's so many, stories out there that Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera, Bernie Williams were on the chopping block and they were going to trade him away as well. And you're talking about getting like these over the hill big names. So it's like, I do think there are times, and I don't want to speak ill of George Steinbrenner because I really do appreciate him and how much he loved to win and wanted to win. But there are times where he just made these moves where you go back throughout history and you're like, the hell was he thinking? I mean, remember when they traded for Bobby Abreu, like at the end of his career?
You're actually asking me that? My dad was on the team.
Yeah.
My dad was on the team.
But that's what I'm saying.
Getting hurt. But I mean, technically, spending could be your Achilles heel. Okay. And
yeah, everybody exactly
understands that. But that's something they have to navigate. I mean, if you really think about it, so we have a super chat here from Brian. It pertains to exactly what you're saying. He said the Mets can't sustain it. Their revenue won't allow it. Cohen will just lose money eventually. Soto is great, but going to the Mets dims his shine. Now, having said this, he doesn't just go to the Mets willy-nilly. They don't just get him for free. Now they have to accommodate for how much money he's making. Now, to your point, Jake, they may just say, we don't give a rip about revenue. We'll just be the 14th most, the richest team in terms of revenue and just go number 1 on payroll by 150 million. They may do that. That's where it would be a problem. But to Brian's point, it doesn't just because you spent players in free agency, it doesn't just mean you're going to make a ton of money, right? These organizations have to do a ton of work building franchises, building fan bases, building season ticket holders over years to make it make sense to spend this much money for the owner. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not too worried about it right now.
Appreciate you, Brian.
Brian, thank you. I'm just of the notion that it's going to not cause problems, but it's something that they will have to think about, right? When they went and traded for Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, they weren't just able to say, we'll pay him and to get him off the team. Let's find a way to trade him and get some value for what we're doing. They had to think about what they were doing. So at some point or another, you're forced to essentially have really Gene Michael was the starter of it all for the Yankees. He's the reason all of this existed, for the Yankees to win as many championships as they did in the 90s and the early 2000s is what he built. Now, some people will say that George Steinbrenner was suspended and Gene obviously took over the organization and really made his impression felt, and that's fair. But George Steinbrenner's spending also set the tone of a win now franchise. So spending can be a good thing, and it's part of the reason why I don't worry. But you still do need smart people in the building to spend that money, because as we know, we've spent a lot of money in our day, and we haven't always won. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I wanted to point out something. I was using Roberto Kelly, who is, a young, homegrown player, as an example. I love Paul O'Neill. He's one of my all-time favorite players. But the point is, when they traded for Paul O'Neill, it was like, why did they do that? It worked out, but it was a lot of those trades where you go back, you look at old Yankees trades, and you're like, the hell did they trade Roberto Kelly for Paul O'Neill for? I mean, Paul O'Neill had, I think, one really good season with the Reds before coming over. And they got him at age 30. So, I mean, just let's be honest with ourselves here. We know what the Warrior is. We know what he means to the team. But that was a wild trade. He was a one-time All-Star, 256, 252, 276, 270, 256, 246. Then he goes to the Yankees, 311, 359, 300, 302, 324, 317, 285, 283, 267, age 38. Where the hell did that come from? This is what I'm talking about. It's just so obviously I'm not saying, we should have kept Roberto Kelly. Paul O'Neill was trash. But yeah, dude, good Lord. Yes, my dad talks about this one all the time. Good
Jay
Lord.
Buhner.
Yeah, just trade away Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps.
And you're going to make stinker trades. I don't want people to look 20 years from now, we're going to trade a player that becomes a great player. Look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers right now are a staple in Major League Baseball. They're by far in the best position of any team. I know the Mets just got Juan Soto, and things are looking bright over there, and they're going to continue to spend. But look at the Dodgers. They got rid of Alvarez. Alvarez, as I said before in a previous video, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, most likely. They just trade him away.
They traded away.
Remember, for James Wolf, was it? No, that was Tatis Jr. I can't remember who it was that they traded.
They traded away Fred McGriff, by the way, Yankees. So, I mean, they've traded away really good players. It happens. I think really kind of my point is that when people say, you didn't have an issue with, George doing this. Well, I wasn't alive, but since I've looked back, and it's weird because hindsight's 2020, but I look back and I do have an issue with the way the money was spent in the trades and all of that. And I know the way it worked out, but there was something about the team that Stick Michael built, and unfortunately never got credit for it, but Buck Showalter helped build. And it was just it was the island of misfit toys. You had a lot of these players like Scott Brocious and, Chuck Knobloch and John Wetland. And, it was just like one of those, they just found they were the Moneyball before Moneyball. But, we talk about Moneyball all the time. They didn't win anything. They won zero, nothing.
That's why I absolutely cannot stand. It's a great movie. But
movie.
The whole concept is just so dumb because who cares how you spent your money if you didn't win? That's why if we won, I don't really care how it gets done. But obviously we've shown.
Okay, I was alive. I was alive, but I was 1 year old. Come on now.
Right.
You get the point. I wasn't like, oh, damn, like George Steinbrenner on Twitter. Like, no. First off, Twitter didn't exist.
I was born in 93. So, I mean, It's not like I had an understanding. But at the same time, I was standing right next to my dad as we were negotiating a contract with the Yankees. And
that's so cool.
It's like at some point or another, you have to really ask yourself, would you be pissed if we were in this exact same situation? If Juan Soto had said, you know what, $800 million, I'm yours, and Hal says, you know what, it's been enough. Hearing that I'm not my dad, I'm not this aggressive owner, which, by the way, we did learn this offseason. He's much closer to his dad than what I think a lot of people projected initially. If he gave him the $800 million, he said, you know what, I'm back. I'm back with the Yankees. Would I have been pissed off for Major League Baseball? Would I have thought, oh, this is a huge problem for baseball? Probably not. But at the same time, Hal Steinbrenner's not nearly as rich as Steve Cohen. He doesn't have
No.
nearly the pull power. I get it. The Yankees make way more revenue from their organization, but in terms of personal money, Steve Cohen can run an organization by himself. He doesn't need profit. His money is different.
Hedge fund money, man. And like I said, other stuff. Google his name. That's all I'm going to say. But it's if he wants to spend his own money, I guess he has that right. But I do think eventually there is an issue with that. Like you can't, and we've already discussed that. We've talked about this at length. So we're going to wrap up the show. Before we do, though, just a quick rundown, just in case anybody's joining. Brian Cashman has basically said Caleb Durbin is the odds-on favorite to be the Yankees' second baseman, in case you missed that. Bibas and Oswald Peraza could surprise. I like that. I like them both. I hope they make the team. Then you had Aaron Judge to right field. It sounds like that's going to happen. So, this depends on what they do. That is a good thing. You get his arm back in right field. It's good for his legs because when you're a patrolling center, I mean, you have to have a lot of range. And, I think he needs to be back in right field or at first base. It's really that simple. And then Brian Cashman, oh, God, do I have to read this? Yes. But Brian Cashman said the Juan Soto sweepstakes took us to Juan Soto took us to heights that I would never have expected. Hal Steinbrenner really stepped up to find a way to retain Juan Soto. I would just say Hal went above and beyond to try to find a way to keep Juan Soto in pinstripes. I'm really good if Brian Cashman never says another word. That's just me. Mark Feinsand he believes Max Fried will sign with the Yankees at winter meetings. He said that on MLB Network. Jack Curry, they like Corbin Burns and Max Fried. They like Fried because he's a ground ball starting pitcher. They like Christian Walker. They like Santander. They like Teo Hernandez. They like Bellinger. Bregman, not so much. All of those names are possible. Jack Curry also listed Teoscar Hernandez, Christian Walker, and Carlos Santana as players the Yankees have continued to keep their eyes on. Alex Bregman is not somebody that they are keen on acquiring. Brian Cashman said the Yankees might already have their third baseman in Jazz Chisholm Jr. Really impressed on how he handled the hot corner. Cashman feels as though, regardless, he's going to stay at third or second. Mentioned that second base is probably easier because it's something that he's done. However, he is not going to play in the outfield, so that's not going to happen in center field.
We do have one last report, by the way. We have something new. This report is from Mike Rodriguez. It's not a signing. It's about Juan Soto. It says the Yankees wouldn't budge on giving Juan Soto a suite at Yankee Stadium, saying it couldn't be done when Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter paid for their suites. My question is, why does Aaron Judge pay for a suite at Yankee Stadium? He's the captain of the Yankees.
I agree, but I'll also say this. Juan Soto is a diva. This is sounding like a freaking Kawhi Leonard deal where they're like, yeah, I need my uncle to have it. Well, yeah, my uncle has to have his own helicopter or whatever. It's like, you are such a clown. Brother, I feel like this is almost done on purpose. Is this not done on purpose? Someone is like trying to be vindictive in some way, or Juan Soto's camp is just playing into the whole I'm the villain. I think he wants to be the villain.
Okay. Well,
so
you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I know. He is getting booed to shit in May. I might even go to one of those games. But
Sophie wants to know, can we make a blue sky because I really miss your tweets? No. I appreciate you joining us absolutely and supporting our channel. I mean, thank you so much. Yeah,
Sophie, appreciate that.
But I will tell you, I will not be downloading any more social media sites so that people can look at my stuff and put it in their own podcast to not be watched. I get enough of it at Twitter. So we'll leave it. We'll leave it at Twitter, where it's just essentially pillow talk and we're just having a good time. But all the real baseball talk happens here. I'm good. I'm sure Blue Sky is a great platform. I don't know. And I also heard TikTok is going to be banned pretty soon. So I guess
I don't buy it. I don't
either. I think they're posturing. Young people will not let it be canceled. It will not happen. So
no. Sophie, really appreciate you being a member. I will say that I'm not going to download it, and here's why. I don't want another app on my phone. And I know that's like, oh, that's a cop out, but it's like having to be on social media all day for like brand presence and everything is exhausting. You get to see a lot of good, but you see a lot of negativity. You even see some other stuff. So, you know, I'm just kind of over it. I understand I have to do it. It's part of my profession to be on social media and be... No, I don't like influencer because they have such a bad, it's almost like such a bad connotation to be considered an influencer today. But no, I just
told someone like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, maybe longer. It's probably like 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I told someone, they said, so what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm kind of like an influencer. They looked at me like I was sick.
Yeah.
Like I was literally like I had a disease, and I never said it again. I just told them I'm a podcaster now. Now everybody's like, wow, that's cool. Really? Where's your podcast? Yeah. And then they look it up.
It's so funny. I've learned to just say content creator or analyst or sportscaster because those go a long way. Podcasters well works. YouTuber works. Influencer, daggers. They just stare at you, daggers shooting through their eyes. So, I stay away from the influencer because you know why? Because now every time I hear influencer, I think of one of those idiots that's in Joey Swole's videos at the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, making one of those videos at the gym and like having like an issue with somebody walking in the background. Like, I will say I'm fortunate. I've never once seen anybody film at the gym before.
You haven't?
Never seen it.
I don't go to the gym.
Oh, that's you just have general back fatigue.
I stay in shape because my dad's basically a Hall of Fame baseball player, and my mom was like a track athlete, so I don't really have to do much to stay in shape. But yeah, you won't catch me at the gym. And obviously into my 40s and 50s, if things are starting to look down for me, I will be at the gym, and then I'll check and see if we still have phones by that point.
Okay, yeah, everything will be in our heads.
Yeah, they might be.
Sir, please stop filming. You can't tell I'm filming.
Yeah,
the camera's inside my head.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yes.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Key is subscribe and hit the bell, because if you don't, YouTube's not going to tell you that we're live. They're not going to alert you anything. They're just probably going to tell you the next morning that we had a live, which is fine. You guys can still watch the shows as they're all there. But yeah, we really appreciate it. What's our schedule? What we're going live again? Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, so we'll be live on Wednesday. We'll be live Wednesday and Saturday. That's our schedule every single week. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Obviously, if something comes up and we're both able to do it, because I do have round table tomorrow and all of that. If something does come up and we can do it, we'll go live for like an emergency broadcast. That sounded like The Purge. This is the emergency broadcast. You have 12 hours.
We're going to end up signing like Freed, making a trade or so tomorrow for sure, now that you have something else on your plate. But we're going to find a way to make sure we cover it. So, yeah, again, guys, thank you. Make sure you subscribe and support the channel. And, that'll be it.
Yeah, and I have to figure out what the hell my movie's going to be.
Oh, yeah, because we did a live. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Wait, do you want me to stall for you? Because I can look at the chat. I would love to almost.
Yeah,
Golden
stall.
Spation says the White Sox signed a dude before the Yankees. Well, yeah. I mean, but who did they sign? Right. That's the real question here. They'll get Rich Hill.
All right, I've never seen this movie before, but type Diva. It's the movie Diva, because that's Juan Soto. So type Diva in the comments section below if you stuck around and watched us. I've never seen this movie before. It's a French thriller. I don't even know, but that's how I feel after hearing the sweet thing. Juan Soto is a diva, and there's that. The Purge. There we go. But yeah, Diva in the comments section if you stuck around and watched the full video. That's going to do it. We appreciate you guys. Be sure to follow us on our social media. Be sure to, if you're watching on Twitter, be sure to head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the Yankees Unloaded channel. Be sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube right now and you haven't subscribed. And be sure to hit that like button and leave a, obligatory supportive comment. That would be awesome. But that's going to do it. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, folks.
Like this video.